With two trades, the Washington Commanders can give Daron Jones the defensive front he needs to start turning one of the worst units in the league into one of the best.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network. And I'm David Harrison, your guy on the ground, credential member of the media covering the Washington Commanders for WUSA 9, also writing for Commanders on SI, and here with you 5 days a week. Coming up on today's Mock Draft Monday, we are addressing some key needs in our first Mock Draft Monday of the year with an actual mock draft that I did in it, and why one of our picks will tell us once and for all if Ben Sinnott was a good pick or a miss by general manager Adam Peters. But first, it's rare that you can trade away a starter and upgrade your team's pass rush along with its inside presence, but that is exactly what we're trying to do in this Mock Draft Monday episode. All of that coming up on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And it's all brought to you by FanDuel. The winter games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with a bet on FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. Mock Draft Monday time, post Super Bowl. Congratulations to the Super Bowl winners, because I'm recording this before the Super Bowl actually takes place. So I don't know who won yet. If my money is good, then it's the Seattle Seahawks. Congrats to the Seahawks. If it's not, then it is what it is. But either way, every NFL team, all 32 franchises, officially in the offseason now. So what better time for me to drop my first mock draft of the season than right now? A little bit of a disclaimer, a little bit of a viewer warning. Understand that as we go through these mock draft Mondays, they're going to continue to change because the season and because the offseason and because the context of what we're talking about is going to continue to change. That's the beauty of having a year-round show, 5 days a week to talk about this team, is we can kind of develop along with the team. So when we drop this mock draft, please don't think of this as this is what I'm telling you is going to happen or should happen or I want to happen at the end of April. We got a long time between now and the end of April, and these things are going to shift. What I'm doing is giving you my view of the team, my view of the needs, my view of what's happening based on what is today. What is on February 8th is going to be a lot different than what is on March 8th and a lot different than what is on April 8th. So ride the wave. Don't try to get too far ahead of the journey. And with that in mind, February 9th, our first mock draft of the season. Pick number 16, we're taking Caleb Banks, defensive lineman out of Florida. Number 33, we're taking Brandon Cisse, cornerback out of South Carolina. Pick number 145, 33 to 145. That is a long time to wait. So here's hoping between now and April. And honestly, right now, number 16, number 33 are not real life picks. We'll get to that here in just a minute. But either way, 145, Tanner Koziol, tight end out of Houston. Pick number 223, Kalon Black, running back out of Indiana. Those are all the picks according to Pro Football Focus's mock draft machine. That is what we use here. So as we go through this thing, that will get updated just like everything else. We will continue to update with it. And the way we got to these picks, 16, 33, 145, and 223 everydayers, you've already been through these full episodes, but we're going to recap it here for those who have not been here. By the way, all the new listeners of Locked On Commanders, welcome to the show. Hopefully you like it. Hopefully you subscribe, come back again real soon. So we have two trades here that got us to this point. Trade number one, or trade A, whatever you want to call it. The Washington Commanders acquiring defensive end edge defender Maxx Crosby from the Las Vegas Raiders in exchange for defensive tackle Daron Payne, pick number 71 and pick number 197. So that is two picks from the Washington Commanders' current draft capital, a third-round pick and a sixth-round pick headed to the Vegas Raiders, along with starting defensive tackle Daron Payne, who, again, the great thing about Daron Jones, the new defensive coordinator of the Washington Commanders, is that his history is full of evidence of him being able to adjust his scheme, adjust the way that he plays to the personnel he has. So quite truthfully, if Daron Payne is still the number one defensive tackle on this team when this team reconvenes in March, or I should say at the end of April for the offseason program, but we get to see them for the first time in March, or May, I should say, sorry. I'm not going to be too bent up about it. I'm not going to be too heartbroken about it. I'm not, whatever. I like Daron. I think he's a cool dude. Certainly has talent, but if we go through what looks like Daron Jones's preferred method, and we'll talk to Daron Jones here this coming week and be able to get more information out of him on what is and isn't preferred, as much as he'll be able to tell us anyway. Daron Payne doesn't necessarily fit the anchor role that he's had success with Daronte Jones has in the past, and therefore going out looking for that anchor, and the best way to go find the anchor and replace the guy who's not the anchor is to move the guy who's not the anchor in some way, shape, or form. If you can do it while getting a little bit younger, Maxx Crosby, younger than Daron Payne, younger even than Dorrance Armstrong, then that's a benefit. But if you also do it on top of improving your team, and here with Maxx Crosby, we definitely improve the pass rush. He joins Dorrance Armstrong, who's going to be coming back from his ACL injury, was on a Pro Bowl caliber level. Dorrance was when he got injured against the Dallas Cowboys in the middle of the season. So you have basically two Pro Bowl caliber defensive ends, edge defenders. Now, Dorrance, of course, is a little bit of a question mark because he is coming off that injury. Usually year one coming off that injury, not as confident as year two, but that's what we do here. And we take 100% of Maxx Crosby's contract from the Raiders, so they don't have to worry about any dead money. That lowers the pick ask just a little bit, as it usually does. So that's the first trade. Now, the second trade that gets us to where we are in this mock draft Monday is the trade that we discussed on previous episodes. Again, everydayers, you're going to remember this. Those of you not everydayers, here's the catch up. You then trade pick number 7 to the New York Jets, and in exchange, you get pick number 16. So you drop 9 picks in the first round, and you get pick number 33. So you go from having basically Daron Payne, 2 picks in the top 100 and a 6th round pick, to having Maxx Crosby, 2 picks in the top 33 and no 6th. Well, you still have a 6th round pick, but you don't have that 6th round pick. You're 1 6th round pick less than you were before. And like I said in that episode, if you're going to hassle me over a 6th round pick, then we're just not going to be able to have a conversation here. We're going to spin the wheel on our free agency options. Again, we did a sign or walk episode, 3 offensive players, Deebo Samuel, Zach Ertz, Austin Ekeler, and using your votes, Commanders fans' votes, 83% probability that Deebo Samuel comes back, only an 11% probability that Austin Ekeler comes back, and a 7% probability that Zach Ertz comes back. Spun the wheel. Deebo Samuel does get re-signed to our roster. Zach Ertz does not. Austin Ekeler also does not. So that is the team that we are sitting with, the current 2026 projected roster, and Deebo Samuel coming back, but those 2 other veterans not being re-signed, traded away Daron Payne, brought in Maxx Crosby, and now we're ending. And now we have picks number 16, 33, 145, and 223 to work with for our mock draft. And because of that, our first pick is Caleb Banks, defensive line out of Florida, with pick number 16, the pick that we got from the New York Jets. In our second trade on the depth chart, he immediately steps in, and he is the top defensive tackle on this roster. Obviously, Javon Kinlaw is going to be there. Johnny Newton will continue to see what he develops into as he develops. Ricky Barber had a couple of really good games, the undrafted rookie free agent there at the end of the season, and that's going to basically be the crux of our defensive tackle room. Now, obviously, there's going to be some offseason moves. Again, we're going to sign some guys. The Washington Commanders, that is, are going to sign some guys. Things like that are going to happen, and potentially Daron Payne may not even go anywhere in real life. And when that moment comes, or we get that verification that he's not going anywhere, we will adjust as needed. And not every mock draft Monday is going to have this trade involved in it, because this trade is fictional. This trade has not actually happened, and therefore we're not going to just stick by it all that much. In fact, unless there's a significant development in the rumors or the stories around Maxx Crosby, this will likely be the last time we talk about it here on the program. So Daron Payne, Caleb Banks fulfills that block eater role, at least projects to fulfill that block eater role, and gives the Washington Commanders someone in the middle to anchor that defensive line for new defensive coordinator Daronte Jones. So with 2 trades, trading Daron Payne to the Raiders, along with some picks for Maxx Crosby, trading that number 7 pick back to recoup one of those picks, at least a top 100 pick, top 34, top 33 pick overall in the NFL draft. We believe that we've bolstered the interior defensive line of the Washington Commanders for Daronte Jones' new defense, and we've improved the pass rush significantly, adding Maxx Crosby alongside Dorrance Armstrong, who's coming back from his knee injury. And from there, we have 3 more picks in this year's draft to attack some of the other needs, including the need to figure out once and for all, is Ben Sinnott actually going to be a part of this team's future, or is he going to go down as arguably the first bust or miss for Washington Commanders general manager Adam Peters? That and more coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And this Mock Draft Monday episode of Locked On Commanders is brought to you in part by FanDuel. The Winter Games are officially here, Winter Olympics 2026. And if you're anything like us, you're locking in for the events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. Our hearts and prayers, of course, go out to Lindsey Vonn, who unfortunately had a very rough ending to her comeback story. Still a lot of bravery behind her. Wishing all the best for her and a speedy recovery as she moves forward with her situation. And if you didn't see that, or if you didn't catch up with all the action going on around the Winter Games, FanDuel will help you do that. And it just makes sense to do it with FanDuel, because whether it's medal counts or individual events, you can find the angle on sports you care about most. And FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action than most. The drama of curling matches that start slow but somehow get intense later in the game. Speed skating races that are oftentimes decided by inches, and hockey games that feel different right from the opening face-off when country pride is on the line. Even niche events become must-watch when you're fully locked into the competition. The Winter Games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. Thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day, every day, and to the everydayers. Those of you come through for every single episode, thank you for coming through for yet another one here. And thank you to everybody out there for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network around. If you are new to the program, welcome to the show. 5 days a week, all through the offseason, Locked On Commanders. We're going to talk about everything happening. We're going to speculate about some things that could happen, throw some good idea fairies out there as well, and really basically just cover all the bases around the Washington Commanders as we work through the offseason into the 2026 NFL season. If you haven't already, please go check out the Locked On Commanders Everydayer Club, lockedoncommanders.supercast.com. There's a membership tier where you get ad-free versions of these episodes and more, and there's an all-access tier where you get everything in the membership tier, including the ad-free episodes, but you also get extras like a daily newsletter. Every time we drop an episode, you get a newsletter, lockedoncommanders.supercast.com, to check that out today. Continuing now with Mock Draft Monday, our first actual mock draft of the new offseason. And again, with the contextualization of the roster that we're dealing with right now, we've picked at number 16, Caleb Banks, defensive lineman out of Florida, to be our new starting defensive lineman next to Javon Kinlaw, rotating in and out, of course, with Johnny Newton, replacing Daron Payne, who we traded to the Las Vegas Raiders over the course of the last week in our conversation surrounding Maxx Crosby, who either does or does not want out of Vegas. Moving forward now, we're going with our second pick in this mock draft. Pick number 33, we are taking Brandon Cisse, cornerback out of South Carolina. Now we're going from the trenches to the boundary. As we always say on the show, it's hard to be a good team when you are bad in the trenches. So the addition of Caleb Banks, the addition of Maxx Crosby, hopefully going to help make this defense much better in the trenches than it has been over the course of the last 2 years. And because of that, we can now focus a little bit on trying to bolster the outside of the defense and get to our next pillar. So we've got our 5 pillars: the passer, the pass protector, the pass rusher, the pass defender, and then the playmaker. Those are our 5 pillars to building a successful roster. With the quarterback, Jaden Daniels, we feel like we've got a passer, pass protector, the offensive line. Not saying that it's the greatest offensive line in the National Football League, but certainly not the problem or even the biggest problem on offense that the team had last year. We'll talk about that here in just a little bit more. Now you're talking about pass rusher, and Maxx Crosby obviously going to do that. Caleb Banks holding down the middle of that defensive line for Daronte Jones' defense, going to help free up some other guys to do that as well, and he can do that a little bit on his own. So now we get to pass defenders, and eventually we'll get to playmakers here. So Brandon Cisse, cornerback out of South Carolina, pass defender with number 33. It's a critical move here because we do expect the Washington Commanders to move on from cornerback Marshawn Lattimore. And because of that, you now have a gap at the cornerback position. Trey Amos is going to be coming into his second year. He did a pretty good job in his rookie season. We'll see what kind of step he can take forward. Mikey Sainristil, in this case, could potentially go back to the nickel, although there are those who think that Brandon Cisse could potentially play in the nickel as well. So really it just gives Daronte Jones and the coaching staff the opportunity to look at these DBs and say, okay, where do we think these guys fit best? Where can we emphasize them the best? Perhaps Mikey Sainristil stays outside. Perhaps Cisse goes inside. It'll be up to the coaching staff. You also have guys like Darius Rush, Trey Hawkins III, currently on the projected 2026 roster that'll kind of help fill out that group. But for right now, that's where we go there. Again, attacking one of those pillars, trying to make that defense a little bit better. But it can't all be defense, can it? I mean, certainly it could be when we get to the actual thing. But here in this mock draft, while we wait from number 33 to number 145, we're going to go offense here, Tanner Koziol, because you guys voted, and because of those votes and the random generator, Zach Ertz not coming back to the Washington Commanders, which means John Bates, Ben Sinnott, and Colson Yankoff are basically your top 3, or not basically, they're your top 3 tight ends before we go through this draft. And because of that, I love John Bates, great blocking tight end. I think he's a better receiver than he gets credit for, but he's not a great receiver just in general. Ben Sinnott, largely unproven. I think we've seen flashes, but flashes are not proof. And then Colson Yankoff, of course, special teams ace. I think he could be a little bit of a Taysom Hill light if he ever gets into a system like that. We'll see what David Blau does with him here this season and starting and moving forward. But what you don't have is that true wide tight end, receiving tight end, guy who can attack the seam, guy that can become a legitimate receiver himself, not just in the short area of the field like Zach Ertz did, which we love what Zach Ertz brought to the team. But a guy like Tanner Koziel has the potential, and I say potential because we're talking about a day 3 pick here, so let's not get crazy. But we're talking about the potential to become much more impactful in the passing game. And it's also a pick that's low enough that you don't automatically just look at it and say, okay, this is your Ben Sinnott replacement, right? If you draft a tight end, even at number 33, you're almost kind of coming in and saying, like, who drops 2 second-round picks on tight ends in the same within a 3-year span and believes that first tight end they took is the bee's knees of tight ends? Not anybody, right? So this gives you the opportunity to still let Ben Sinnott come in and seize the day. But if not, it gives you a guy with potential behind him who has a legitimate receiver background, receiving tight end, I should say, background to come in and compete. So not a 1-for-1 Zach Ertz replacement by any means, but this now gives you a tight end room that features John Bates, Ben Sinnott, Tanner Koziel, and Colson Yankoff. And then, of course, you just see who ends up at the top of that depth charts. 6'7" frame on Tanner Koziel, elite production in college, 164 catches over the last 2 seasons, provides a mismatch weapon. And we talk about David Blau's system, and the thing about David Blau's system, if you caught up a little bit with what Jaden Daniels has been talking about at Super Bowl Radio Row in San Francisco, he talked about the departure of Cliff Kingsbury, talked about the elevation of David Blau. And one of the things that he talked about was about how David has been around not only Jaden, but obviously Cliff, but then also integrating some of the things that he's learned from Ben Johnson. And that tells me that there's just a little bit of that is expected from Jaden Daniels, and expected by Jaden Daniels should be expected by us. We've talked about this Ben Johnson system, how it likes to leverage the power slot receiver, which would be Luke McCaffrey in this case. You obviously have your X receiver in Terry McLaurin, but it also needs a wide tight end. It needs a Sam Laporta or somebody like that to help stretch the field in the middle, to help attack the short, intermediate, and deep areas, run the seams, things like that. Tanner Koziel is a guy who, by the time the actual draft process is done and we get to draft weekend, may not be in this range, but as of right now, he's projected in this range. So we take advantage and we go get a wide tight end for David Blau's offense, which brings us to our 4th and final pick of this mock draft here, pick number 223. So again, another long wait to come up with this one, but we end up with Kaelon Black, national championship running back out of Indiana, with pick number 223. Addresses the Austin Ekeler vacancy because, again, you guys gave the votes on sign or walk. Most of you voted to let Austin walk. Rolled the dice. He does end up walking in this iteration. So that means Ja'Cory Crosby-Merritt is the only running back we have in our depth charts before the draft even happens. Chris Rodriguez Jr. is a restricted free agent. We do expect the Commanders to bring him back, but he is not currently back. No confirmation that they have taken significant steps to bring him back. So in the meantime, we're looking at Ja'Cory Crosby-Merritt as the only back there. You do need to eventually add to that. Obviously, free agency is going to open up the door and opportunity for that. We'll talk about that in a later Mock Draft Monday iterations, including our next one, which is going to be a really fun experiment for me. Not so much for those of you who are going to think I'm stupid and hate something that I do, because it's going to be a mock offseason and somebody inevitably is going to tell me that they think that I don't know what I'm doing. And that's the fun part of this part of the season. So Ja'Cory Crosby-Merritt being on the roster, you got to add a second guy. Kaelon Black is obviously a dude who brings that physicality, 10 touchdowns as a national championship running back. He's got some receiving ability in his history as well. And I think that would be a nice compliment to Bill in its current stance. Obviously, one mock draft with no off season to speak of isn't going to fix every hole, but let's take a look at this class. Let's take a look at the moves that we have made in this mock draft Monday. Look at the holes that were filled and look which ones need to be filled so we can start talking about the path ahead for the Washington Commanders this offseason. Coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And this Mock Draft Monday of Locked On Commanders, Mock Draft Monday episode of Locked On Commanders, brought to you in part by Indeed. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper, but they just weren't the right fit in person, you know how important it is to try to get that right. And when you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, you need to trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. If I need to hire someone to help me with Locked On Commanders, I would go to Indeed sponsored jobs because they make your listings stand out so you can reach quality candidates faster. Those sponsored jobs boost the post to the people who are the best match for your role, and that can make a real difference in your search. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. So spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results. Using Indeed sponsored jobs, listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. One pillar of a successful roster, as far as I see it here on Locked On Commanders, the passer is set in Washington. The pass protection, I think, is better than a lot of the other areas of the roster. Certainly not the best in the league, but the rest of them could still be addressed to varying degrees. And coming into this, the priority of those pillars, which does not necessarily dictate the order that we go looking for players, although in this case, in some ways it did, ends up being pass rusher, defensive line, which of course all these things kind of interchange in parts of the 5 pillars, right? Defensive line, linebacker, pass defender, playmaker. So we get our pass rusher with Maxx Crosby, bring Maxx Crosby in, improve that pillar, that pass rushing pillar. Defensive line help gets a little bit of a boost from Caleb Banks being added. The pass defender, we go after Brandon Cisse out of South Carolina. That's going to make Deebo happy because, fellow Gamecock there coming into the system. Playmaker, you get Tanner Koziel, also had to Javon Kinlaw, another Gamecock. Playmaker, you get Tanner Koziel to add to the tight end room. So we addressed some of those needs there. Linebacker being the biggest need that we didn't address in this mock draft. And I will tell you, there were spots in this draft, specifically when we took Koziel, that was a spot. Also, when we took Kalon Black, there was a spot. There was a linebacker there available that we could have taken that I like. But because mostly of roster thinness, I decided to go in a different direction. And because of that, in our post-mock draft depth chart, your linebackers actually end up being Jordan McGee and Frankie Louvu. And I know some of you have been wanting Jordan McGee to get that starting opportunity anyway, but here he absolutely is going to. Kane Medrano, Ale Cajo, backing them up. We have the 2 running backs, Ja'Cory Crossy-Merritt, Kalon Black. Nobody added to the receiver room. Tanner Koziel coming in to compete for a depth spot, but who knows what he could turn into and what Ben Sinnott does with his opportunity. No offensive lineman, which means Brandon Coleman is currently slotted into the starting left guard job, which is where he started last year, ended up getting pulled and benched for Chris Paul. Chris Paul did a really good job. He is a free agent coming up this offseason. We'll see what the Washington Commanders decide to do there. On the defensive side, again, we added Maxx Crosby to the group. Dorrance Armstrong coming back from the knee. Javonte Jean-Baptiste also coming back from his own injury. He's shown promise in his time on the roster. Caleb Banks coming in to be the new anchor of the defensive line next to Javon Kinlaw, Johnny Newton, among others in rotation. And then Brandon Cisse joining Trey Amos and Mikey Sainers. So potentially one of the youngest cornerback groups in the National Football League. That would be if you were able to, if you pulled that off. Brandon Cisse himself, very, very young in his development. So you would love to have a veteran, you know what I mean, in there so that Brandon Cisse can grow into his position versus kind of having to be thrust into it. But we're dealing with the roster we're dealing with now. Will Harris and Quan Martin still your starting safeties, and I know some of you wouldn't necessarily love that either. But again, keep in mind, we're not doing a full-blown mock offseason in this iteration here. We're just kind of finishing the conversation on the Maxx Crosby trade that I've been talking about the last couple of days. I wanted to put a bow on it here, kind of give a little bit of insight into what an offseason would look like, or at least a mock draft would look like with that trade in place. So that was the objective for this mock draft Monday. I think that we achieved it. Again, not telling you this is what the roster is going to look like in April and all that other stuff. So keep this to first week of February, second week of February context, and I think we'll all be okay. Coming up next time on Locked On Commanders, we will continue to dissect everything going around the team. We're actually going to hear from Dan Quinn, Durante Jones, and David Blau on Tuesday afternoon in Ashburn, Virginia. So we will have plenty of context to add from the coaches themselves coming up here real soon. So make sure you are subscribed. Follow along with Locked On Commanders so you get all the latest episodes. And you can follow me on X at DHarrison82 or on Instagram at DHarrison_82. If you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club literally built for you. Again, you got 2 tiers, membership tier, all access tier. Membership tier, you're getting ad-free episodes and a little bit more. All access tier, you're getting those ad-free episodes and more. Plus, you're getting other things like that newsletter, but also you're getting subtext access to me, which means you get to text me from your handy-dandy cell phone, and I get to send you messages that come through your phone as text messages. So literally just right there in your hand. It's something that I try to do at every press conference. Now, again, we'll see what happens on Tuesday. I can't make any promises because it's the first press conferences of this new season, but what I try to do is text you guys throughout the press conferences. So if you can't listen, or even if you're listening, I give you kind of a contextual summary of what is being said. A lot of people really enjoyed that part of the program. So again, all access to get the ad-free episodes and also get the text message service from me and also to me. So if you want to call me a dummy, you can do it phone to phone. It'll be a lot of fun. LockedOnCommanders.supercast.com to check that out today. Next up, check out the Locked On NFL podcast twice per day on YouTube or on audio. Check out the Locked On NFL podcast at the bird's eye view. All the reactions coming from the Super Bowl twice per day, like I said. To the everydayers, I see you. I appreciate you every single day, and I thank you again for coming through to another episode today. To everybody out there, until next time, please stay safe, be kind to one another, and we will talk again real soon right here on Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.